Hello everyone, welcome to MEGAFOON Sport, time for Formula One Focus. And my guest here is Hendrik Verwoerd, well-known Formula One journalist here in South Africa. Hello Hendrik.
MW, is it MW in English or is it
It's
still
MVA,
in
MVA,
okay,
please.
MVA.
Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm all good. We're going to try this English one and let's see how it goes.
Okay.
See if we can reach a bit of a wider audience. Let's talk about the Japanese Grand Prix quickly. It's been a while now since it's finished. What more can we say? Max won. Sergio ended up second again, and Sainz seems to be making sure that Ferrari must be starting to doubt their decision to dump him in favor of Lewis Hamilton.
I think it's a bit early to say they are starting to have second thoughts about it, but he's certainly the stronger of the two Ferrari drivers, and he's got a good reason. Obviously, he's trying to advertise his availability to whoever wants to talk to him. And I mean, let's face it, he's an excellent world-class Formula One driver, potential world champion, just like his teammate. And he is very, very strongly motivated at the moment. So no surprises there. And I think what is helping him and Charles, by the way, as well, is that the Ferrari of 2024 is a far better car than the 2023 version and the 2022 version. So, you know, they've overcome some problems, especially, you know, the tire management situation, where in the past they really suffered over race distance with their tire degradation and tire usage. Problem seems to have been solved now. They may lack a little bit as far as single lap pace is concerned, but you know, so that's something that they need to work on. And it's quite clear that the influence and the effect of Fred Vasseur at Ferrari is now starting to show. You know, the way that the team is working is different. The way that they apply their strategy is different, far more effective than it used to be before. And of course, he would have had a hand in the direction of the design of this year's car and the aspects of that improved this year's car as opposed to last year's car. His hand is in there as well. So I think, you know, we are still, I think they're on an upward trajectory, which is good, because they seem to be the only team that is remotely able to challenge Red Bull at the moment. And let's hope that they get closer to Red Bull. Let's not forget, of course, that Red Bull is still developing their car. They brought a big package of updates to Japan, especially around the cooling of the car. So they're not sitting still. They are certainly not sitting still, and they are not going to allow, if they can, any other team to even get close to them.
I'm gonna adjust or adapt a famous English saying here. Say, hell have no fury like a Formula One driver scorned. And Carlos Sainz seems to be wanting to prove a point here, and I think he's succeeding in it. The question now is, before we go on to discuss the rest of the race, where do you think he's going to end up? He's got various options, and one of the stronger ones that seems to have been emerging last couple of days is maybe going to Aston Martin, and either as a replacement for Fernando Alonso, or maybe please as a replacement for Lance Stroll. What do you think about that one?
I can't see Lawrence getting rid of his own son, to be honest. You know, that is one of the weaker points, I think, at the for Aston Martin as a package. But where would Carlos end up? I mean, you know, he's going to end up in a competitive team, and there are only so many competitive teams. He could end up at Mercedes. He could end up at Red Bull. He could end up at Aston Martin, and he can't end up at McLaren. So you know, those are the only possibilities. There's no way that he will end up in I don't think, in a team like Audi, for instance. I think that's too much of a risk for him in his career. I think he needs to be in a position that he can challenge for wins and possibly even for the championship, so that he will make sure that he isn't in a competitive car. And there are only those few seats available, really, on paper. In Mercedes, definitely. I see there are more and more indications coming out of Red Bull that they are seriously thinking about retaining Checo. You know, he's had a very strong start to the season, but I think they're going to wait a little while longer because it's still early. I mean, we've only had 4 races out of 24, so he also had a strong start last year, as we can remember, and then he had a big dip from Miami onwards, Checo. So I think they're probably having a look to see if it's not going to be the same. before they make a strong decision. But there are all kinds of indications coming. Praise from Marco, praise from Chris Horner about the performances being put up by Checo, and you know, he's been second behind Max on 3 occasions so far this season. He's done his job to finish second behind Max. It didn't quite work out for them in Australia. He should have won in Australia when Max retired, but he wasn't in a position to. He had a car that didn't quite work as well. He had, I think, some damage, so he had some issue anyway. He didn't qualify well, so he was only able to finish 5th. But that's a little hiccup. I mean, so far this season, by and large, he's done his job. So Checo may still remain at Red Bull. Verstappen, is he going to leave? I don't know. I don't think so. I think similarly, you know, he knows which side his bread is buttered. So why would he leave, you know, a team that is so dominant that he's set to win his 4th World Championship this year, probably even the 5th next year. So why would he leave and go somewhere else unless he decides to retire? He could well do that. I mean, Max doesn't strike me as the kind of driver who wants to extend his career as long as possible and maybe set the new record of 8 or 9 or 10 world championships. I think he you know, he's the kind of guy who would retire when he feels he's done what he wanted to do in Formula One. There are many other things that he would like to do. Most of them got to do with racing, but you know, his attitude is the world is not Formula One. So he can retire at the end of the season if he wins his 4th World Championship. That's quite possible as well. So at Aston Martin, Fernando, you know, I think he blotted his copybook a little bit with Mercedes in Australia. But I mean, you know, these things are all games. It's gamesmanship. It really is gamesmanship. These guys are saying certain things, and I bet you that the complete opposite is probably going on behind the scenes. They're playing the game. We all know it's a game, and I think we all enjoy the game of speculating, and it's a talking point. Who's going to go there? Who's going to fill Lewis Hamilton's shoes at Mercedes, sort of thing. I cannot tell you who's going to end up where, but it's an enjoyable discussion point anyway.
The silly season, it started early this year because so many drivers' contracts expire at the end of the year. So there's a lot of speculation, and I think the thing the domino that will start everything off is when Max decides if he's going to stay or not. He should stay. He's got a contract till 2028, I think. The point is, if he moves, then everything changes. But the one person I would not like to be in Formula One at the moment is Toto Wolff. I need to replace a driver of Lewis Hamilton's calibers. You need to attract a top tier driver. Yeah, you've got a long track record and you've been successful. The point is, they didn't understand their car at all. They were all, you know, excited about now they've got it under control this new year, the 3rd year of those new regulations. This car is going to be the one that turn around their fortunes. And it's still a disaster. They still don't understand it. And Lewis Hamilton seems to be completely despondent. I think if you can go on gardening leave before the end of the year and rather sit out the rest of the season, he wouldn't mind doing that at all.
I think we are fans, and we'd like to see results, and we'd like to see things happen. But I think we should also keep in mind that this is a brand new car. It's not the same car as last year or in 2022. They had to basically start from scratch with this car, the W15, from a blank piece of paper, so to speak. And we're only 4 races in. So, you know, there's not a lot of testing opportunities before the start. There's very few, in fact, 3 days of testing before the season starts. So you really have to sort of see the beginning of the season with a brand new car as an extended testing period. And I think that's what they're doing now. Yes, things are not working for them, definitely. And poor old Toto has to you know, kill the one fire after another and try and manage the whole situation. I don't envy him at all. And it's going to take a while. They are not going to challenge for wins very soon, unless something obviously goes wrong with anybody ahead of them, or for championships. But what they are saying is that they are now seeing a sort of direction that they can look at. Things are not working at the moment aerodynamically for the car. They have data that do not match. between the their computer systems and what actually happens on track. No correlation. That's the word I'm looking for. But that's only aerodynamically. I see everybody's talking about this remark made by Toto saying that in one corner in Australia they had 70 points of downforce, but not a single kilometer per hour in performance. But the thing is, that's downforce. That doesn't necessarily mean speed. Downforce can also mean drag. So, you could have all the downforce, as we know, with Formula One's rear wings, but a huge wing gives a lot of downforce, but it also creates a lot of drag. So it could be that aerodynamically the car is not working, but at least if they know which direction to develop, they need to also make the car work as far as mechanical grip is concerned. In other words, the suspension system, I think we spoke earlier in the season about the fact that they have now got a different rear suspension system. You will know it's either the push rod or the pull rod. I don't remember which one it is, but it's different from the one they had. And they've got to still work that out. And you're talking about margins of millimeters, if in fact not even that, maybe fractions of millimeters of settings that you have to work. And you've only got a weekend to do that in. Because you cannot run the car at any other time. So I'm not trying to make the case for Mercedes. They are certainly struggling. They're certainly not competitive, and they're probably at the moment the fifth fastest team. But I think they are working towards a solution. It seems from what they're saying that they know more or less in which direction to go. Lewis Hamilton has had the worst start to a Formula One season. There's no question about that. And yes, maybe he feels a little bit despondent. I see there are some comments on social media where people are very negative about the fact that he was so easily willing to just let his teammate pass in Japan. The Lewis of old would never have done that. That is not true. He's a team player. Lewis knows that if he cannot deliver and his teammate is in a better position, then he would rather let his teammate go and deliver the results. Lewis is the team player par excellence, I think, in Formula One. So that is what it's all about for him. It's not about, I'm ahead of my teammate. My car's worse than his, but he's faster than me, but I'm not going to let him through because he's my teammate. Lewis doesn't think that way. So, yeah, I mean, that's the situation that Mercedes finds themselves in. And nobody's going to be done any favors this coming racing in 10 days or so in China, because we're only going there for the first time in 5 years, the first time that this new situation or the new ground effect situation, dispensation is in effect, and it's a sprint weekend. So it's going to be a lot of head scratching going on in China, but I think that's a different subject.
I think we also talked about it earlier in the season. You've got Adrian Newey, who's a superstar designer, but make no mistake, James Allison is a bloody good designer himself. And if it's one person I know that can fix it, it will be him. So it's a matter of time. Just on the subject of barn door back rear wings, made me think of McLaren, unfortunately. And they seem to be on a nice upward trajectory themselves this year. But now it seems to me, I don't want to jump the gun here, but they seem to have inherited some of Ferrari's strategy woes. I mean, they basically threw away Lando's race over this weekend with a too early stop, I think. I mean, they stopped him on the same lap as Charles Leclerc. And that means it negated the extra pit stop advantage that he had. I mean, that's a stupid mistake. Andreas Stella says, no. It was purely performance-based. But I think strategically, they made a mistake. And Lando made no bones about it. He wasn't happy.
Yeah, that could well be. That. I mean, it's always easy to look back and say what one should have done. But maybe during the race, they should have known that if you go in early, even if you do a two-stopper, that still leaves you vulnerable towards the end of the race, because you're going to have worse tires than your opposition that stayed out or had a longer first stint, or maybe even a longer middle stint. So I mean, they threw the dice. It didn't work for them, just like Mercedes did. Trying a one-stopper and being so conservative in their pace in the first stint that they lost so much time and so much performance that it didn't work for them, even when they changed to a two-stop strategy. This is maybe the one thing that one can say about Formula One. strategies do make a difference, and it's fascinating to see the different strategies and how they work out, and sometimes they don't work out. And the Suzuka circuit, especially, I think, makes it difficult for strategists to decide exactly what to do. It's a very abrasive track. It's very hard on tires, and everybody knows that before. Everybody knew that it's going to actually be a two-stopper. Mercedes couldn't make it work. Only Charles Leclerc could make it work, and he worked his way up. From where was he, ninth, I think, on the grid to fourth. So, that one stopper could work. And that's also why I do say that Ferrari has certainly found something. It was shown by Charles, also, apart from Carlos this weekend. So, yeah, that was difficult. The other thing that also happened, I think, on race day at Suzuka was it was much warmer on the Sunday, on race day there, than on either the Friday or the Saturday. I mean, the track temperature on Friday, Saturday hovered in the middle 20s. Around the middle 20s. It was the outside temperatures were lower than 20 degrees Celsius. So it was cool outside, and the track temperature was low when they practiced. And it rained, of course, in the one practice session. So they really only had, two. In fact, they effectively only had one proper practice session. And then on Sunday, when the race day came, the sun shone. There was virtually no clouds at the start of the race, and a track temperature of 40 degrees. That makes a huge difference to what your tire performance and how you approach the race and the tire strategy. So those were a number of unknowns, and certainly certain teams got it right and certain teams didn't get it right. And I think McLaren was one of them. They didn't get it right with Lando. You're right, absolutely.
One driver that seems to be not meeting expectations, or not living up to expectations, and one who should be looking over his shoulder in a rearview mirror is Daniel Ricciardo. Because right behind him, there was a photo this weekend of Daniel Ricciardo standing in the pits, and who's standing right behind him? Literally, Liam Lawson. So I think his
thunder on his face.
His seat must be in danger. I can't see any with Helmut Marko there. I mean, I wouldn't count on being in that seat for too long if I were him.
Yeah, things don't. It's just the way that things don't work out for Ricciardo. He's been very unlucky. He lost a lap in qualifying. Where was it in Australia, when he should have been inside the top 10? And who was it the one before? I can't quite remember. But I mean, to lose a lap and then drop like 8 or 10 places on the grid because of that compromises your race right from the start. So there's no way that he could have really overcome that. And then he comes to Japan, and because it is Japan, the team wants to show the Japanese junior driver what it's like to drive a Formula One car at home. And so they give him the first practice session. I even forget his name, a young Japanese driver, and he didn't make it. He did okay, yeah. And then the second practice session rains out. So poor old Danny only had, the third practice session, and then he comes to the race and he takes himself out. But that was a racing accident. I mean, there's no way you can actually say that is an extension of a bad performance or a streak of bad performance. He was caught in a position. Yes, he had a bad start, but that happens to anybody. And he was in a situation where he had to try and see, who's on his inside, because he wanted to take a specific line into the corner. He didn't look at who was on the outside. And less than a few hundred meters into the race, his race is gone. So things are just not working out for him. One can easily look on paper and look at the results, but you've got to take these sort of things into account as well. The reasons for that. I think it's too early, definitely, for Helmut to pull the trigger on him. But I think if things do not improve, and I'm not necessarily talking about results, but if he's not more competitive against his teammate, and if he doesn't show that he is worthy of a Red Bull seat again, they could well decide by the middle of the season, and that's race 12. That's still 8 races to go. Then we're only at the middle of the season. By then, they could well decide, okay, let's pull this one and let's give Liam a chance, which I think would be a good thing for Liam, because I think he certainly deserves to be there. He showed that last year. But, one does feel sorry for Daniel that he hasn't been able to find a place where he could be, comfortable ever since he left Red Bull, really.
was thinking the same thing. I mean, he made his own bed. Man. He made that decision to go to Renault.
Oh.
Didn't work. Went to McLaren. Was even more of a disaster.
Yeah.
And now coming back, he gets his seat back, and then he breaks his hand. I mean, when last did that happen in Formula One, that somebody got injured? So
that was also
race.
very bad luck. I mean,
yeah,
that wasn't really just because, for any other reason. It was just bad luck in the wet at Zandvoort.
Now that you mention it, you mentioned about the accident they had in the beginning of the Japanese Grand Prix, and who did he crash into? Alexander Albon. And who's one of the candidates to replace him or replace Checo maybe in Red Bull is Albon himself. But that team, Williams, is the one team that for me has completely failed to deliver this year. There was so much promise. Things looked so upbeat, and James Vowles making the difference, and he had these nice talks and inspiring people and everything. But now when it comes to results, the team is a disaster. I mean, one car crashed and they don't have a spare chassis, and then Sargent goes off again, and then Ricciardo crashed in the race, and Sargent crashes again. I mean, that guy also must be living on borrowed time.
Yeah,
I
think Sargent is certainly on thin ice there, because 2 of the 3 crashes were mistakes by him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 4 crashes actually, if you think about it. Albon had 2, one in Australia, and now he was involved in another one, not his fault. And then there were 2 crashes by Sargent, and apparently, the total cost for the team is something like $2 million. That all comes out of your budget, out of your cost cap budget. It's been a disaster for the team that finished so strong. Well, last year they finished 7th, remember?
Yeah.
And Jack Charles, I think, played a huge role there. There are many reasons, and I don't want to find excuses for everybody who's not performing. Yes, the only way that you are measured in Formula One, in motor racing, is what happens on track and what the results say. But there are certain reasons, and there was a long, in-depth interview with James about what he found when he arrived at Williams, and he found the archaic systems that they had in place of how they designed cars, and the systems that they had in place for manufacturing parts, and then quality control and everything were from Noah's Ark basically, and all of that. I can't go into all of that, but all of that resulted in them not being able to build a 3rd chassis in time for the start of the season, like most, if not all, the other teams had, apart from Alpine, mind you. So they were in the position where they couldn't run 2 cars in Australia because of that. So it's that has a long lead up to a situation like this, and then it doesn't help if one of your drivers crashes by making mistakes. Albon crashed at exactly the same place in Australia, I think, than somebody else, or was it him last year? That's a difficult corner, and it's very easy to crash there if you just put your car a little bit in the wrong position. So yes, no, I agree. Williams is not performing, but this is a team that finished 7th last year. They have all the potential. They should actually do better, and maybe they should find a quick replacement for Logan Sargent.
You mentioned Alpine, a works team with its own engine department, stone lost.
No point.
No points whatsoever, and no chance of a point. Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe that's the question being asked by the mother company, by the owners, by Renault, the car company. What are we doing here? We're spending X millions, numbers of millions on a marketing exercise for our sports car department, and it's not working. And certainly you cannot market a sports car by finishing last in the championship, and not being competitive against other works teams. So yeah, all kinds of noises coming out of the environment that they find themselves in, that they might be up for sale. Maybe that's a little bit early in the season to say, but I wouldn't be surprised. We talked about it, you and I, about Alpine maybe being for sale, and even Andretti maybe being in the market to buy them. I don't think that is such a far-fetched idea at all. Both of them, that the team is in the market, and that Andretti may be looking at buying them. I don't think that's too far-fetched at all. Having said that, just as we speak virtually. The Andretti team has just opened their own facility that's been constructed for a while. They've just officially opened their own facility for their Formula One team at Silverstone. They've just done that, literally, maybe an hour or so ago. So I think that shows intent. That is a facility that they're going to use to design, to research and design the car, which will then be built in the United States. And the race team will also be based in that facility at Silverstone. So they and Aston Martin will be neighbors. And I think it shows the intent of the Andretti team that they want to still be in Formula One, and they are putting in everything that they can. They are recruiting people. They're putting up facilities. They're doing everything that they can to convince Formula One that they want to be in the sport. Are they going to buy Alpine? Well, if they do, then they will have to bring the team personnel over or marry the facilities. So they're certainly going to keep their own facilities. They want to be a team that does their own thing in their own facilities. They want to be an American team that builds their car in America, possibly later on with American drivers, one or two, and of course American owners. So they could take over maybe, I don't know, some of the personnel and some of the facilities, but the facilities of Alpine are spread between Paris and England. So that's not ideal for them either. Lots of speculation, but I think there might be something in there.
I agree, and I like the idea. I read somewhere that Alpine might be open to a sale on the condition that the engine department gets kept running for around 2029 or so. And I know, Andretti had an agreement initially to use engines for 2 years. That agreement has lapsed since, but I mean, it talks about reviving it. So we'll have to see. The other thing that came up just quite recently is Helmut Marko hinted again that VCARB or RB or Visa Cash App or Toro Rosso or AlphaTauri, whatever you want to call it this week, might be up for sale again. And that's another option, another potential way for a team like Andretti to enter into the sport. I mean, I know there was a lot of talk about being sold before. They now moved the team, most of it to England, a little bit left in Faenza. But, there's smoke, there's fire. Maybe that might happen.
I think if that's true, I don't know whether it is or not, that the team is or could possibly be up for sale. It will probably be easier then for Andretti to get them because they will have the facility in England that RB has now just moved into, close to. Well, they're part of the whole motorsport and Formula One hub around the Oxford area in England. So that will be much closer because of the Andretti facility at Silverstone, which is obviously part there, close there. So that would make a lot of sense if they then do that. But I think there's a lot of water still under the bridge before something like that happens. I think what we hopefully are going to see is Andretti allowed as an 11th team, not as a replacement for a current one.
Yeah, I can't see that happening. Too many vested interests, too many people worrying about their own pockets and nothing else, not the sport itself. Anyway, we've run out of time. Just quickly, the next race is going to be in China next weekend. Another sprint race, the first race in China since 2019, like you mentioned earlier. And we'll have a chat, hopefully before then, we'll see how it goes.
Okay, and I think that the teams are a little bit apprehensive about that race because they won't have any information that could be applied from the previous dispensation. So it's going to be something of a lottery for them, and I think that's great for us.
Yeah, it is. It makes it more exciting. Nobody knows what to expect then, something unexpected might just happen. You never know.
It could even rain, so...
Yeah. Right, Hendrik, we had our first English conversation. I don't think it went too badly. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. I
appreciate it too. I hope people could understand.
Yeah, I'm sure. Just slow it down a little bit, Turn the speed down. You'll hear what I said. So there you go. Thanks, Hendrik. We'll talk again soon. Appreciate it.